So I was at LAX on my way back to Atlanta on November 1st when the shooting took place in Terminal 3. And as you can imagine, the events were very interesting to watch and experience. I just kind of wanted to share a few thoughts for whatever they're worth, because it was really an excellent experience and perspective for me. And so for me, my experience began in Gate 14 in Terminal 1, where I was waiting to get back to Atlanta. I was going home to have a weekend, an early Thanksgiving with my kids. And I was sitting there, we were about 10 minutes away probably from boarding, and suddenly people just started moving around and hiding behind chairs and acting panicked. But they weren't really making too much noise. It just was this weird, sort of strange, chaotic movement. And so I kind of just, not knowing what to do, just sort of followed people, and I saw people going into, the breezeway or whatever on the way to the plane, and I'm just going, what is going on? I mean, it had this very weird, surreal feeling. Definitely felt like something was happening. Was there a fire? Was there a plane about to crash into the building? Was there some sort of terrorist thing or a shooting? Wasn't really sure. And so we're all just mulling around and acting kind of crazy. And then finally TSA started routing us sort of into this one little area around Terminal 13 or so. And then they opened up some side doors and people started going out the side doors. And no one was sure whether or not they were supposed to go out, were they supposed to stay. A lot of mixed signals at that point. But again, it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to stay here. And then more people were going outside. I was like, okay, I'll go outside. Again, just no one really knew. And then somebody said there was a shooting. Then the conversation started taking place. Somebody shot a TSA agent. And we're like, what? So now we're really freaking out because we don't know, well, where is this? Where did this take place? I didn't hear anything. It was in Terminal 3, I found out later. So we all go outside and we're taken to, standing against a wall across the tarmac looking at the airport. At this point, there's 6 helicopters around. We're hearing sirens. We're seeing cops walking around with big, huge, rifles and things like that. And we're hearing through people checking it out on their phones, going to CNN, we're hearing more and more details about somebody was killed. There were other injured. All the different terminals are shutting down. So we're getting news through our phones. But at the same time, there's a lot of speculation talk. So it was really interesting to see. But after the fact, like today, this happened yesterday, I was reflecting that I actually experienced some sort of a disconnect the moment it started to happen. It was like when people started hiding and running around, it felt very surreal, like, okay, I'm in a movie. And the other interesting thing was that there was no screaming. There was just a little bit of going on. When I look back on it, I wonder how this all happened, and I speculate that Terminal 3 is really on the other side of the airport from where I am. So the shooting took place, there's probably wild panic and screaming there, people diving around and doing all sorts of stuff to save their own lives. And then that panic just sort of swept through Terminal 2 all the way down to the very end of Terminal 1. So there was probably people hiding and people just watching what's going on and just saying, okay, well, people are hiding and running, I guess I need to hide and run, but they don't even know what from. So that was a very strange situation. But then there was this strange calm because we didn't really know what was going on. At that point, I just became sort of a spectator of, I'm just going to go here, I'm going to go here. I didn't get too caught up in any sort of emotion. I really, truly disconnected because I think that what was happening is that this experience was tapping into some super deep, like extreme fears, like things that you think that you're afraid of, but you don't really think would ever happen, like being at the scene of some sort of a shooting or a violent act like that. And I'm thinking, no, I see this on TV, this is in the movies, this isn't real. So there was something like the fear was so intense that could have been in there, childhood stuff suddenly coming to the surface, that it was like, okay, I can't feel this right now. I can't allow myself to go to that place because it's too extreme, it's too intense, and so I'm just going to assume that everything's going to be fine. And I'm just going to follow things and that somebody somewhere has this all figured out. And as I'm standing out there by the wall and thinking about what's happening, okay, well, I'm clearly not going to make my flight, and I'm supposed to go home. What about my plans? And it started to pile up the impact that this was going to have, not knowing exactly how it was going to unfold. And that's really where my journey with surrender began. I'm looking at all of my plans falling apart, and there was nothing I could do about it. And then that's when I made the choice, okay, well, there is nothing I can do. I have to do exactly what they say, and I'm just going to have to go through the motions because clearly this is about our safety and this is just how it's going to work. So it was just about saying, all right, I can't get attached to any plan that I had. I don't know what's going to happen. let's just go one moment at a time. At some point, a bunch of buses came around and picked all of us to pick us all up to take us somewhere. And so as these buses are coming in and people are just getting in the bus because we're being told to, no one knows where we're going, why we're going there, how long we're going to be there. And some people were like actually not getting on the bus because they had this thought, well, what if they take us and then they open the airport and then we go back in? And there was just all this like, this doesn't apply to me thinking. It was really interesting to watch how people handled this situation. Very interesting from a sociological point of view. But eventually we all had to get in the buses and we were all taken to some smaller terminals away from the main airport where we would spend the next several hours. We get there, there is no access to any sort of food or drinks, there's no restaurants open, there's not even water. There needed to be some sort of voice of reason, someone to give us an update, and some woman from Southwest named Gigi, who in my mind was like the hero of the day. She kept a great spirit, she had a sense of humor, she acknowledged the situation, she was very honest, and just to me managed the situation wonderfully. At one point, they started bringing water and food in from the Red Cross. And at this point, I'm like, okay, this is like a real event that I'm a part of. People bring stuff from the Red Cross in emergency situations, right? That's what I see on TV, and I'm going, that's what we're dealing with. It was just this surreal thing, like that I was not just a spectator of something big that was happening, but I was actually a part of it. Yeah, I mean, I was never really in any danger. And it was mostly just an inconvenience, but I was part of the story that everyone was talking about. And I'm looking out over this sea of people, and I'm thinking about how many stories there are out there. So the ripple effect of this one guy and the lives he affected, truly, it's global. Directly and indirectly, this guy created an impact that was felt all over the world. But it was just interesting watching people be people, and to get just how automatically we go into coping mode when something like that happens, when some sort of a tragedy or an event that's just like beyond our comprehension. It happens right next to us, and how our brains just go, how am I going to cope with this? I'm not judging how anybody responded, it's just noticing. Because how earlier I was talking about a feeling of being disconnected, and I think that there had to be some level of disconnection that everybody had there to be able to just get through their day. I mean, someone was killed and other people were injured. That is a tragedy, and it's very, very traumatic what happened, especially for those who were around there. And I heard conversations from people who were around there, and yet somehow they had to go, but I've got to get through my day. So they turn off the horror for now, and then they do whatever they have to do to cope through the process of waiting and just trying to get home. And who knows what happens when they all get home and they process this, kind of like what I was doing this morning when I just sort of realized that I had disconnected emotionally so that I didn't have to experience it on some level. When this was happening, it kind of seemed like we were in some sort of quarantine or prison type of situation. We couldn't go anywhere, and then we had no choice. And many plans of many people were completely annihilated. I'm sure there were lots of dollars lost, and probably even more serious things than that happened or will happen as a result of the ripple effect from this. But for me personally, I lost a day and I lost a trip home, and I'm not happy about any of that, but it really could have been much worse, a much different situation for everybody there. And for me, it was a lesson in truly finding the gratitude in the experience, not for it, but find the gratitude in the experience and really choose to learn from it rather than to sit around cursing it, because one approach is actually productive.